Attitudes by Andrea Burton. What is an attitude? Well, first, let's start by defining what an attitude is. Simply Psychology defines attitude as a relatively enduring organization of beliefs, feelings, and behavioral tendencies towards socially significant objects, groups, events, or symbols. Angela M. Sabates takes it further and says that attitudes are a summary of evaluative reactions of a target that include dimensions such as good and bad, harmful or beneficial, or likable and unlikable. Attitudes are complex and ambivalent. They happen almost automatically and affect our social cognition and perceptions. Most of the time, we are not even aware of these. Sabates goes on to say that as soon as we encounter stimuli, we immediately classify it as positive or negative, and the stronger an attitude is, positively or negatively, the harder it is to change it later. Perhaps the most helpful definition or explanation of attitudes I have found comes from Very Well Mind. Simply put, they describe an attitude as a learned tendency to evaluate things in a certain way. This learned tendency to evaluate can include people, issues, objects, or events, and can be formed by many different things. Attitudes can be implicit, meaning unconscious, or explicit, meaning we are consciously aware of them and how they affect us. On Saturday, May 15th, I spent the day observing my attitudes. Throughout the day, my attitude changed at least 5 to 10 times. Some of the attitudes in which I felt were happy, bored, excited, nervous, overwhelmed, and upset. There were many different factors that changed my attitude throughout the day. The day started off positive. I slept in and woke up with my cat cuddled up next to my head. When I was younger, I was terrified of cats, which led to a very negative attitude towards them. I was scared. However, as I grew up and was around cats more often, I started to really like them, so much so that I got one. My cat, when I woke up on the 15th, was cuddled up next to my head. He is cute and snuggly, and when he shows affection to me, it brings me a lot of joy. After getting up and getting ready for my day, my fiancé and I went to the farmer's market that our friend started this year. My attitude towards the farmer's market started as good, exciting, accepting, and cheerful. However, before long, I realized the amount of people there, and that changed my attitude. I started to feel nervous and overwhelmed. We also realized that my fiancé had to suddenly go into work, which made our attitude a lot more negative and making us more stressed out. Movies affect our attitudes because if it's a positive movie and happy, we are more likely to be happy and positive. However, if it's negative and sad, we are more likely to end up being sad and negative. Finally, something that changed my attitude on May 15th was an argument that my fiancé and I got in. Why do attitudes change? Well, attitudes are obviously not set in stone. The same things that help to create an attitude can also help change an attitude. Some of these things include conditioning, persuasion, and conflict, also known as cognitive dissonance. According to Very Well Mind, classical conditioning can be used to create positive emotional reactions to an object, person, or event by associating positive feelings with the target object. Operant conditioning is used to strengthen desirable beliefs and weaken undesirable ones. Persuasion can change our attitudes if we are willing to listen to the speaker. Messages that are thought-provoking and that appeal to logic are more likely to lead to permanent changes in attitudes. When I think of this, my first thought is listening to a sermon at church. If we truly listen, and if what the pastor is saying is thought-provoking and logical, we are more likely to change our attitudes according to the pastor's sermon. Finally, conflict, or cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is all about inner inconsistency. According to Andy Luttrell, in this week's video, cognitive dissonance is when we hold two thoughts that are inconsistent with one another. He gives the example that someone who considers themselves an avid smoker, but also knows that smoking is bad for them, has cognitive dissonance. Admitting that they are a smoker, but that smoking is bad, is contradictory. This can cause attitudes to change, if they are willing. Attitudes have many important functions. Sabates says attitudes help us organize our complex social world because they enable us to interact with it without having to reevaluate the same target, person, or situation each time we encounter them. Attitudes are also a form of self-expression. Attitudes can also help with impression management. If we want to give the impression that we think something is positive, our attitude towards that topic will help give that impression. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bone." Colossians 3:17 says, "Whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him." These are just a few of the very many verses in the Bible that direct the type of attitude we should hold. Our eyes should perpetually be locked on Jesus, nothing else, and definitely not the things of this world.